Hi, my name is Sharon Cumberland. I'm going to read an occasional poem that I wrote for Seattle University when one of their best donors, Anne Wyckoff, turned 90 years old. The poet laureate of the state of Washington will probably be called upon to write occasional poetry for special events, and so I wanted to illustrate one of the ways that I approach it. Now, Mrs. Wyckoff, as you know, I'm sure as most people in Washington know, has been a very, very generous donator or contributor to universities, colleges, schools, and arts organizations. And so I had to think about where this money came from and how it was distributed and why it was so special. As you'll see from my application, I think in terms of metaphors. So what I needed was a good metaphor. And when I discovered that the Wyckoff fortune began with apple orchards in the state of Washington, I thought, there's my metaphor. I'm going to use Appleseed John, who was Johnny Appleseed, who distributed orchards throughout the country in the same way the Wyckoffs distributed their generosity throughout the state. So one of the techniques you'll see in this poem and that I teach is that I often encourage poets to find another text that they can alternate their work with. So because Mrs. Wyckoff was a religious woman, is a religious woman, and Seattle University is a Catholic university, I used the metaphor, I displaced some of the poetry onto a psalm. So when it's a familiar psalm and you'll probably recognize it, but when it's my poem, I'll have my hand on my chest. When it's the psalm, I'll raise my hand. So this is called Appleseed John Ponders on Psalm 121. Here I am, Lord, with a bag full of seeds. My boots are worn thin, my hands rough from planting. I lift up my eyes to the mountains. Where does my help come from? You gave me my feet and my head of ideas. You gave me the earth to try planting seeds. Some withered and died. My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. I planted on mountains, I planted in swamps, I planted on pasture and grasslands and rocks. I learned as I planted. He will not let your foot to slip. He who watches over you will not slumber. I learned not to scatter, but how to make orchards. The trees helped each other the more I nurtured. You showed me, Lord. Indeed, he who watches over Israel will neither slumber nor sleep. The earth is my cushion, the leaves are my blanket, the apples my dinner, the starlings and finches my visiting angels. The Lord watches over you. The Lord is your shade at your right hand. The very fruit of Eden, Lord, is food and shelter now, the fruit of forgiveness, Macintosh, Baldwin, Ashmead's kernel. The sun will not harm you by day, nor the moon by night. Cox's orange pippin and golden russet delight your land. They sip the sun and grow at night. You sowed them, Lord. The Lord will keep you from all harm. He will watch over your life. You sowed them, Lord. You used my hands, my feet, my clever brain, my sturdy heart. You filled my mouth with persuasion. The Lord will watch over your coming and going, both now and forevermore. And now, Lord, what now? Your apples cover the land, pies and vinegar, jam and cider, and feed for creatures of every kind. Here I am, Lord, though my boots are worn thin, my hands rough from planting. So that was the poem that was presented to Mrs. Wyckoff. It shows several strategies that I teach students, particularly specificity. That is, instead of saying lots of apples, you look up the names of particular apples. You displace your feelings onto a metaphor. And my idea is that if I can teach enough people in enough categories of groups to learn how to displace their feelings onto metaphors, they have a very effective and powerful way to talk to one another. In these upcoming 2 years, we may really need that strategy. Thank you very much for listening.